and
good.
she will be here in 5. So yeah, we should be good to go.
Okay, wonderful. Well, as you said, thank you for the time, Victoria, and look forward to going through the platform with you. I think before we dive into the demo, it's always good just to set some context to who we are, what you're hoping to achieve with the tool, and amongst your other tools and platforms, obviously. Our goal was around engagement and just seeing that as a clear need within many of the companies that we work with and for, and just not having clear systems around people development, how team leaders are able to engage effectively with their team members, how we have skills defined, et cetera, and really kind of setting the baseline of how we would drive structured improvement. So that's the hope. And I think we could get very deep into our backgrounds. Michael and I, we've worked many years together in terms of advisory and kind of strategic type projects in different types of firms, but we've always come back to the people side being a missing ingredient in terms of effectiveness and getting things done well. So it's easy to force things through, but we know it's more sustainable in the long run, obviously, to bring the team along with you and have a clear development plan in place, the what's in it for me for younger and older generations alike. So I think the intent with this is to make all of those expectations clear and explicit, and then again, build that system of accountability between the team member and their manager or mentor. So that's a broad overview, but I think, Victoria, if you don't mind, just kind of expanding on what you were starting off with, just what problems you're working to solve currently, where you guys have some clear gaps, and how we might be able to kind of support, at least in a high level view.
Yeah. So, just a small background about me. I'm the talent acquisition and training manager here. And then Kelsey is an engineer, but she has, strangely, a background in learning and development as well. So although she won't be helping us implement, I mean, maybe a little, but like she just has like actual work to do that isn't this. So, and really kind of right now we're sort of taking Nitsch a little bit into the future. So currently I'm implementing a new ATS. Our HRIS is Paylocity, so we unfortunately can't integrate anything into it. They are awful. And we really don't want to use their LMS at all. I don't really understand why all these websites say they're the best one. I think they must have paid for that spot. So we right now have a variety of different training programs and quite a lot of them. So we have the in-house training programs that include, HR trainings, leadership trainings, and then we also have we have 5 departments here, all within different types of civil engineering. And they all obviously need to have training for their new hires. And right now it's sort of like everybody does something different. And there isn't any sort of like streamlined, this is how we onboard new engineers. And then the third aspect is we also have outside trainings with the ACEC, which is like the organization that civil engineering firms belong to. And so for all of these trainings, we need to be able to kind of, one, have everything living in the same place, aside from obviously these external trainings, but we're struggling to figure out how to evaluate how actually effective these are long term. Are they worth the money? What are people actually getting out of them? What does the development look like long term? And then on top of that, just our department to department training is an absolute mess. There's just nothing is, everything is different all the time, and it's just a little bit chaotic. So we need things that can be engaging, ideally, some sort of like software tracked or, multiple sort of options in terms of like how we can build out training. Even some like assistance and like authoring would be great if we could get it. But that's sort of like the gist of where we're at right now.
And with respect to any of the current training, do you have it bundled together into a curriculum, so to speak? Is it linked with a given associate's responsibilities in their job? Or is there take this module and this module and this module, and then you can become qualified for project estimation, as an example? Are there any framework curricula or learning paths that you have?
So yes, yeah. So there's a few. So the first is just like, as I mentioned, the like onboarding piece for different, we are an industry where everybody has to be licensed. So it's a little bit different than maybe some of the other, I guess, organizations I've worked in. And then yes, some of it is like we have a project management handbook. So with us, you start having graduated college as a designer. Once you get licensed, you become an engineer, and then far down the line, you become a project manager, wildly far for what I do in my career. So we have this like long, giant handbook that either if you're getting promoted, they kind of start to work on. So some of it is like meetings with people, some of it is trainings. I think there's a lot that could be built out in the program, but some of it's just like necessary meetings and stuff like that. And then, that also is something that is given to people that we hire as well. So there are pretty much like anything training related that you can think of, we kind of need in terms of like the setup. So like new hires and promotions and software training specifically, any sort of like creative way we can get our, into that is great as well, because they're all working in these like design programs.
Yep, for sure. And how far down the journey are you in like, capturing individuals' expectations in a job description or competency framework? Is that reasonably well developed where you sit right now, or?
Yeah, we have career pathing.
Great. Okay,
cool.
Well, I mean,
I'm sorry, Michael.
Go ahead, man. No, please.
I was just going to ask Victoria, how do you manage that, and how often do you come back and do a review of progress against it, and kind of who's part of that discussion? Is HR plus manager or just manager?
So we actually just finished it.
Okay.
So this was a little bit newer. I don't know if they had like an old one, but I know they just finished the new career pathing. I mean, it's fairly simplistic, just in that it more defines kind of what the expectations and responsibilities are. Our career pathing is pretty much the same any way you chop it, throughout departments. So, but HR owns it. I will have some to do with it going forward. I don't know what our review process is going to be. Quite frankly, it just hasn't been on the list of things I've asked my boss yet, but the managers they were responsible for a certain amount as sort of controlled by us.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah, well, it's very in the vein of what we'll see with the workflow that we've set up. So I'm looking forward to showing you that one. Remind me too, you mentioned kind of the 5 distinct groupings, but how many people or how many kind of team leaders would you have in and amongst the organization?
So we have just on our engineering, so just on the engineering side, we have survey, structural, transportation, civil, and then our like climate resilience team. So that's 5 teams plus we have about 140 employees, give or take, right now, and looking at a little bit of growth. But and then of course we have like our regular departments, which will be using this probably a lot less, mostly just for like leadership development and like actual onboarding, like sexual harassment training, yada yada yada. But that's finance, accounting, HR, administrative, all of those sort of like basic functions.
Very good.
Yep. Okay.
Michael, any other clarification before we?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think it's probably helpful just to jump right in. I mean, you'll see, hopefully pretty quickly, it's like, we've got, features of an LMS because you got to be able to house training places.
Sure.
We organize it within the framework of the set of expectations, for a given function. We can link those individuals to their leaders, and then we provide a workflow to encourage two-way interaction as people are going down the development journey. We feel pretty strongly that having that engagement is kind of the secret sauce to making training investments actually have returns on investment, with respect to improved results or, better developmental outcomes. And then, we've got some aspects of, career pathing and assessment of my skills versus the job that I aspire to and the like. So I think, based on what you described, it'll be pretty intuitive once we start actually showing what it is. So.
If you
Awesome.
mind, Victoria, if we go ahead and dive in, short of Kelsey being here, are we fine with the recording?
Totally. Yeah.
Very good. Okay. Well, let's do so. Okay. Well, truly, I would say, Victoria, we've oriented the tool kind of be built around the exercise that you just completed, which is fantastic. So career pathing, job description, definition of role responsibilities, skills requirements within it as well. Compliance is also included within that here. So this is really the starting point. And given the nature of your role, and I already appreciate your candor with this, our tool is highly malleable and adaptive, some might say. So the intent is that we can really bridge to a process in the way that you have defined it, but we can also support you with bolstering the process in a way that also kind of builds that accountability flow between the users and their mentors or managers. So keep that in the back of your mind just as you're looking at what we have built out here. The Career Builder page is the hub for any user as they log into the platform. This is completely unique to their profile. It is built kind of as an interplay between themselves and their manager. It can be set also by the admin of the organization. So somebody such as yourself or another kind of whatever custodian of the requirements, skills, and responsibilities would be able to designate and define for a given role. Here's what you're expected to do. What's also nice is that you can do a phased approach. So you can say for someone coming through the screening onboarding phase, you can then roll out a sequence of these elements to display to them so that they can come up the curve of onboarding in a way that's very structured. So that could also support your use case. And then over time, you begin to build out a very nice reference point that's objective between the user and their team leader that's truly driven by this first denotation of what's priority. So by me selecting these things, I'll be doing that as part of a discussion or an interchange between myself and my manager. Those items will go right on to what's called the skill plan. Very intuitive, hopefully that it's either a quarterly, a semi-annual, or annual type development pathway that you're working towards in conjunction with ultimately your career pathing journey. And so for the user, it gives you a very nice, clear dashboard. Where are you now? Where do you need to be? By when? What's the status? And this in and of itself is what you could use to drive a nice one-on-one or a development check-in. I'll touch on the scores here briefly in terms of the rating, but I'm sure that's intuitive to you in terms of how you might sequence that out and put some language behind it. So the next wave that we found is a real nice point of how we built the platform kind of outside of what you can do in Excel or otherwise is the engagement piece that then is brought on with the pulse check. So the pulse check is the continuation from the skill plan. You've already set the priority. With this next feature, it's your accountability piece. So I know that as I log in here, and ideally I'm doing this regularly enough, probably once a week is what we condone, sometimes maybe less frequently, whatever's intuitive for your environment, to be able to do a quick reflection on what's going well, what's not going well, where do I have issues or pain points that I want to put my hand up, indicate on the page here. And then with the knowledge that with my responses as I'm filling them in, I'm also going to give some commentary around how things are going. Once I've submitted that, then my team leader or my mentor is going to have that on his or her profile as a reference point for us to check in on. And so that we found is demystifying, taking away the fear of with the one-on-one discussions as you might know them, hoping to scope it very tightly as well. Sometimes we find that the one-on-ones can branch off into many different areas. If you put it specific in the vein, especially for a new hire, let's check in on your onboarding plan. How are things going? What can we do to support you or help you improve? Likewise, somebody farther on their journey, it's the same type of discussion, tilting probably more so to a target role. So where are they working towards on their career path? You can be very heavily tilted to that part of the discussion. But for me as a team leader, I'll log in and kind of view my team members. On their side of the page, I immediately have a nice clear dashboard of how they responded. When I open this up to meet with them directly, or if I'm checking in ahead of that meeting, I can get a nice view of how things are going, where their headspace might be, likewise, and get commentary around where they're having issues or problems. Part of my job then is when I have the interaction with them directly, or whether I want to do it ahead of time, I can add coaching notes and feedback directly here on the page that then translates back onto their development journey and gives them obviously some commentary and direction along with the action items that we'll set. So that in and of itself, we found is a very powerful way of trying to shrink the universe of how to have these discussions in a way that's to a point, driving in a certain direction, facilitating the support. So I'll pause for a sec just to see any questions.
No, that's great. And this is this typically used by your customers as like a part of performance reviewing, or like what kind of tie-ins do you typically see?
It can be for sure. And, we built this feedback module such to keep a progress log. And, one could also, as a manager or team member, put in notes. Obviously this is the constructive aspect of development planning. You could theoretically chunk in a corrective action plan in
Sure.
here as well. So, we would expect that all of the inputs and outputs to this process, is manifest in one's performance review for the year, along with whatever other competencies that need to be assessed. But those competencies, including values, could be layered in this tool as well. So you can kind of get the whole gamut of feedback and progress on the things that the organization has deemed important.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I like that
Yeah,
a lot.
and in fact, we are working on a beta module that links to organizational goals as well. Because this is within the scope of one's career development. Kind of the next step is, how does my career development fit in with the strategic objective of the company? So we've got that fairly fleshed out, but this is just the people development tool that you're seeing here.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's from our perspective, Ben and I are both operations people. I was a COO for a long time, and I'm in private equity now. And the cracking the people nut is always the thing that needs to be cracked in order to perform well as an organization. So, we kind of consider these systems for training and development and accountability and visibility of results just table stakes for high performance.
Right. Awesome.
So taking one step back here, this is in the vein of how the user would interact with the profile. There is a nice kind of piece of the administrative element or the setup, and not meaning for that to sound difficult, but I think to the extent that you would like this to function as an LMS, it can do so. So we've built it to be a fully featured LMS in that regard, that you can take any of the artifacts across the organization, standard work, SOPs, work instructions, what have you, populate those, link those to the skills, and then immediately that becomes visible to the team member or the user within their profile on this page. This page is what's called the skill journal. So this, again, is unique to the user for this certain item, whether it's an onboarding piece of compliance requirement, or if it's a skill they're working on, or an element of their responsibility. They'll have this view specific to their world. And as mentioned earlier, with the progression framework, we've just kind of borrowed on some of the background of our different environments we've worked in. Simple scale 0 through 5, working your way up, obviously, past the point of beginner, training phase, competent, proficient, you're driving improvement within that role, expertise, willing and able to teach others, and having that be specifically linked to whatever criteria you'd like to link it to. It's obviously the goal, but it just at least paints a very clear picture of where are you now, where do you need to be. With this also, with the development pathway, this can be done broad brush. So you could say, as the admin, here are the requisite tasks and steps necessary to go from each level, or you can do it tailored to the individual or a hybrid in between. And that's a handy feature, obviously, for thinking of somebody new in a role or working towards a higher level, and what can we be doing specific that could help them on the journey, always giving them a clear next step. And then likewise with the verification, we've built this in so that once you get kind of past the point of novice or in training, anytime that you're starting to select for these items, you'll get this notification saying your team leader is going to be part of this verification. So the team leader will get a notification on their profile, likewise, saying that you've requested that skill level. And then as you're working your way through the development pathway, they will also need to verify on their end that the work obviously has been complete, so that you can show the progression clearly. So that's with that piece. Oh, good.
So you think about that like from the perspective of a professional certification, right? So when I go take the test and I get my certificate and stamp, obviously that's the trigger for, someone to flag in the system that, I've attained proficiency or competency or whatever for those sorts of things. If it's, a skill that gets built through on the job training, utilizing a specific type of survey gear that we use, they're new in the role, they don't know how to use the Trimble, whatever, then you can have development pathways for that. And, that type of learning that requires on the job function, usually needs a lot of feedback and coaching along the way. to judge or grade or assess, where somebody is on that journey. But, I think the most important features here, have they started or not? Are they capable? And then can they teach? So, we could expand or shrink or rename the criteria for each of those assessment levels, but this is what we have default coming out of the box. So
Cool.
And then likewise on this page, similar in the development pathway vein, the essential resources and activities. As mentioned earlier, this is where you can build in whatever standard references or materials you'd like to, perhaps a curriculum, so to speak, of a pathway of here's what need to be completed and reviewed in order to progress. We do offer some library content, some great book summaries specific to the leadership business skills. I can show you more of that in a moment here on this part. And then the community content, a way just to create a wiki internally of some best practice knowledge sharing in case any references or links are useful. People can add that, of course, within moderation to be able to make it visible across the platform. Likewise with collaborators and mentors, anybody else working on this skill, we can have it across a department or across the whole profile or platform in terms of who else is working on it. Likewise with mentors, whoever's at a level 5 or willing and able to teach, we can indicate who they are as well for that visibility. And then to the previous screen with the one-on-one flow, you can see whatever action items you've defined, what coaching notes are on the page. So you always have that closed loop reference cycle of continuation, along with a progress log of your journey there. So this is really beyond the initial career builder page for the individual user. This is where I would go if I want to double click on the detail, understand specifically what my next steps are for a given area.
And note that operations management is a skill to be learned that cuts across the organization in the database. And that might be associated with several different roles and therefore, groups of different individuals. But what Ben is showing is the generic operations management skill with all of the associated links and content and collaborators and mentors, but that this is my progress as the user within that skill. So there is an aspect to this page that's, root level, universal, and then there's specific to the user. So from a management perspective of this skill, you only have to do that once, with respect to pinning all the content to it. And then the user kind of takes its path or their path through the journey with their leader.
Great.
Very good. And just going back to Career Builder here, this will help bridge the next portion. For the users, and I'm logged in as an admin, so for yourself, as an example, Victoria, you would be able to have visibility across the entire platform of users and click into their profile to see where they are, which scores they're at. Likewise, if I'm a given user, I can also kind of click across the screen here. I can see what's my target role that I'm working towards once that's been defined, along with clicking in, using my skill profile and doing a quick comparison of where I stand for that certain role. And that's a nice way, obviously, to do a goal seek and for my own kind of development and intuition. So then for your purposes, where you can set the role planning, and it sounds like you've already done this to a very good extent, taking that same career pathing exercise, layering it in here in terms of where your team members are currently, what they're working towards, whether or not that's explicit or implicitly known, you can define that. But then likewise, you can be here doing this type of goal seek to be able to see, okay, perhaps not director of sales, perhaps you want to make them a warehouse manager or engineering manager. And in that way, it can also update the skills, show you generally as a roll up of all those 1s, 2, 3, 4, and 5, take an aggregate of that, and then show you where they are in respect to readiness for promotion, readiness for cross training, whatever other purposes.
Lateral moves, whatever. Yep.
So that's obviously more of a leader or an administrative function, getting down here to the reports, but that also does set the expectation back on the Career Builder page for what the user will then see within their profile to work from. Okay, so I'll show you briefly a tool that we've seen as useful for people in your type of environment. So when you've got new projects or expansions coming on, or even new team members, helping to build the construct of how a team needs to perform in the way of what specific skills, duty, responsibilities, what they need to build competency in, who's on the team, and then being able to obviously visualize it in the matrix format. And then you can also do that kind of broad brush across a certain role or across a certain team or group. And then you can add individual skills and team members. So this is a living, breathing skill matrix that you can have over time. Save these as certain views and reports, load those back up, and obviously it will be malleable in terms of what other activities happening within the system. So that is a nice reference point we find for someone such as yourself that has to look across the whole organization. Activity reports, really an excerpt of all the activity taking place, so all the data transactions, etc., skill progress. If people are checking in or reflecting, also shows updates on that. Likewise, with insights, there's a heavy amount of data here across the platform. And what's nice, Victoria, you can appreciate it. It seems very subtle with what the users might be interacting with, but from our viewpoint, from an administrative or leadership standpoint, we have a very clear visual on where do team members need help, which skills are appearing on the skill plan most frequently, et cetera. So once it's populated, it'll start to pull through here. So that's a nice feature as well that we can then see immediately as it comes to life.
So this is based on like training results or feedback, or like how is the who needs help defined?
And I apologize not pulling through clearly for today, but as a matter of course, it's any of the transactions within the system, Victoria, that are occurring, you'll be able to see that pull through. So immediately any of the skills that you want to filter down for, you'll see who's at level 3 or higher, who's at the level 5. So it's nothing that's being done extracurricularly. It's truly within the flow as the team members are using the platform. You'll be able to have those insights derived here automatically.
Yeah, just querying the database. And, so like we had shown on each individual skill, you can append notes and the like. So there's a lot of information that's in the system that, we just set up a few kind of plain language queries, but then we can also work with you to write very specific reports as well, for managing professional certification or looking at journey or the so-called progress report, the annual appraisal report, whatever. So. But there's a lot of information, as you've seen, that's in the system that we can tease out.
Nice. Well, I love reporting, so that's great.
Yeah, and when we started with plain language prompts, I guess we were ahead of the AI curve a little bit. Just figuring people would like to see, a question answered as opposed to, query this field and that field and what's the intersection groups and all that stuff. So we chose to not put a big reporting engine here, but for most people, this is going to get most of their questions.
Cool.
Good. One feature, and we'll be honest, Victoria, we're in the midst of kind of doing a nice update of some of the navigations that might speak to some of the jumping around. But there's a feature called the training calendar, which I think, given your initial context, would be very useful. And that is a way that users and/or admins can schedule discrete training events, indicate which skills they pertain to, link those out to the users in the platform. And then for them, they can register for it directly, click on the attend link, obviously track all the information, kind of the exchange throughout that with whatever resources or references you're uploading to that training. And likewise, it'll pop up on the activity log as a discrete event. And you can also link that to the progression within their development pathway. So that's a feature that we've taken away just for the simple purpose of seeing it, but we can add that directly back for how we would implement it for Nitsch.
What is the purpose of that? Is everything else just totally public for the rest of the organization?
Yes and no. So there are different views, obviously, given the level of role that you play within the organization. So admin or director level would have full visibility, as you've now seen here. For a team leader, they have purview of their team and only those users within their direct stead. And then for a team member, they would only truly have visibility to their own career builder, along with their own skill plan. And then for their pulse check, they would only have their own pulse check, not the view of the team.
So what's the use case for the discrete
and mentors? Sorry.
What's the use case for the discrete training then? I'm a little bit confused because if it's only their manager and HR that can see it, isn't it already discrete?
No, good question. So the HR and/or manager can create those training events, and then within the system, what it can be done here is you can link that as a specific discrete action that needs to be taken in order to progress to the next level. So it's you defining, here is a certain training taking place on this date. You need to attend and verify completion of the required deliverables in order to progress from level 4 to 5. And that way, it's just another way to close that loop more finitely. for the team member to see.
Got it. Okay. Okay.
It's a scheduling prompt. I mean, it's just informational. Yep.
So, and I think let's pause here and kind of zoom out a little bit as well. And our goal, truly, Victoria, is optimizing this for team leaders and a series of team leaders, obviously, in a larger organization such as yours. And we find that the team leader role just typically isn't well adjusted or suited or probably trained for this type of activity with their team members to think on development and do that in the course of actually running the business and meeting their own objectives and results. So what we found is if you can optimize it for their world and make it very clear that, hey, they can come alongside their team members, do that in a way that is not overly laborious or time consuming. It can be just a couple of those one-on-ones throughout the course of a week or every couple of weeks, that they can be adding references and ensuring that development pathways are up to date, that it doesn't require much overhead to have their employees feel like they have support, they have coverage, in addition to what the organization is offering as a whole. So that's the way we view it. And with our pricing, that's the way that we also offer it, is really driven by the team leaders and the number of team leaders that you have across the organization, using that as kind of a node, so to speak, from each team leader to their team members. So hopefully that that stands clear to you in terms of how we've constructed it, but just pause and see any other questions you might have on some base functionality.
I was actually curious, you mentioned pricing. What is the pricing on this?
So as it stands currently, and our website does need to be updated, but as it stands currently, we work on that node basis. So we're at $79 a node, and that's obviously meant to simplify for the team leader. And that can be, call it however many, 4 to 6 team members that they'll have underneath them. And so our goal is, again, optimizing.
Our teams are typically, just so you know, about 20 to 50 people.
Okay, fair enough.
Is that too much?
No, we would need to, I think, just send you a clear pricing overview of how to do that, but no, that's not a problem.
So what you're saying is, sorry, I'm trying to wrap my head around how the pricing works. So it's $79 per manager?
Correct. And
per month?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay. That makes sense. All right, great. I mean, I definitely have to review this with Kelsey. I apologize she wasn't able to jump on. She's dragged into all this engineering stuff. I don't know that I have too many questions right now. It's really just a matter of whether or not this, to be transparent, I don't know that this really provides the amount of functions that we really need in actual learning. We already have a performance review and career pathing process that is fully integrated with software. So I don't want to necessarily yank your chain, and that I don't know that this will really work, because really, like, it's the training itself that we need help with. Like, we do need to be able to evaluate the effectiveness of it, but more so feedback is something we already get. So it's less, getting feedback is not really what we're interested in. It's more a long-term progression of actual, skill development and outside of the employee feedback. So I really need to, at the price point, it might make sense to like integrate it into something, but engineering training is our first and foremost sort of priority here. And we need something that can like track software and kind of help us a lot more with like curriculum build out than just sort of like the assessment after the fact. But I'll have to have a chat with Kelsey and see what she thinks and regroup. Do you guys typically do a follow-up?
Yeah, more than happy to.
And in our implementations, some organizations need more help on the job description build out. So we help with that. Some organizations, like, you're describing, need more texture and content related to the training itself. And like for every one of those skills, requirements, or responsibilities, the database will accommodate levels of hierarchy of detail. So for cross-functional collaboration, you could have 7 sub-elements and 35 sub-elements that all, build up to that tree. So, we could help out, theoretically with, loading the system with the detailed curriculum for however you wanted to define the framework. So we can be adaptable, in implementation to kind of meet whatever needs you're looking for. But
yeah, I
anyhow.
mean, I completely understand that, but like, I have to be honest, I don't know that it makes sense to, when that is like really primarily what we're needing first and foremost, I don't know that it makes sense to use a platform that's not its primary focus, and to then do like a theoretical build out when there are like other platforms that are specifically for that. That integrate in. So again, I just need, because again, the price point is not bad for this type of like performance management, sort of long-term assessment. But I just need to have a chat with her and then my manager about like kind of what we're doing and planning on doing with this going forward.
Victoria, to be honest,
Oh, very cool.
something we like to do, especially in between an initial demo and a follow-up demo, we are more than happy to build out, call it a pilot team construct, and do that in order to make the use case more explicit for you and help tailor it more to your world. And also with that, I mean, we are flexible in the vein of we want the solution to add value, and to the extent that you'd be willing to even do, call it a month trial and then take it month to month from that point, we are happy to support that. So our goal is, if you can learn anything from the process flow of how you want to then build in other functionality or features, we can support that journey. So that's an option.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. But again, I don't know that it makes sense with my bandwidth to do like a trial of something that we'll kind of have to like scrap maybe and do over. And I also just like don't know that it makes sense to spend your time building out like a more use case based scenario, and like it just feels like a little bit of a stretch, if I'm being completely honest. So like I said, I'd really like to follow up with Kelsey and kind of see what her thoughts are. She might just have a different perspective. And hopefully we can schedule a follow-up and go from there.
Perfect.
Last I'll say, Victoria, and sorry to keep digging in, but it is a very kind of straightforward implementation from the initial build out phase. So I guess from your standpoint, don't want to waste your time by any means, but from our standpoint, we're more than happy to do that work. It does not take long with a simple reference point of a job description or whatever framework you're willing and able to share. So we're happy to do that.
No, we just don't have it. Again, this is like the job description stuff is just not what we really need.
Yeah,
understood. We have
we only use that again
all
just to
done.
help make these elements explicit. So
totally. Well, I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a really nice day.
Likewise. Thank you.
Likewise.
I'll share the link with
Good to meet you.